Good morning, everybody. It's a Dog H. Weber with you with another edition of Weber This Week here in the Finger Lakes on FingerLakes1.com. Today, we dedicate our show to the South Seneca ladies girls basketball team. What an outstanding effort in Troy, New York over the weekend. Congratulations to Heather Mott and all of the South Seneca ladies and all the fan base out there in the south end of the county. Last time they won the title was in 2003. They captured it with impressive wins over the weekend. We'll talk about that a little bit later, but congratulations. And we dedicate our show this morning to the South Seneca ladies. Well, today it's a great pleasure to have the administration of the Seneca County Sheriff's Department joining me this morning on the show. And that, of course, is friend Tim Luce, the sheriff. Tim, thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
And John Cleere, the undersheriff. Thanks, John, for coming in as well.
Oh, surely.
We're going to talk about what's triggering the Sheriff's Department. You guys took over a few months ago, Tim. You and John are working together with your fine team. Talk about how it's been the last few months, getting acclimated, getting your feet wet as the new sheriff, and give us an update of where you stand right now.
Well, we really, it was a smooth transition, but we hit the ground running. It seemed like we had accreditation in the first month that we took office. Thanks to Gary Sullivan and Jack Stenberg, the sheriff and undersheriff, we probably couldn't have done it without them. They really laid the foundation there, so that was awesome. And then we have 2 contracts going on right away, one with the correction officers and one with the deputy sheriffs, and that's we're working on that, and hopefully that'll work well. But it's been really good.
Has anything surprised you in the first few months in the chair as the sheriff of the county? Has anything surprised you that you weren't expecting?
I think just probably not surprising, just getting used to some of the things. I thought I knew exactly what was going to happen, but learning to deal with the board and resolutions and the budget lines and personnel, it's really eye-opening. It's been good, though.
For the viewers that don't know you, like I do and like a lot of people do, talk a little bit about your background, where you were born, how you got involved in the law enforcement.
Well, I was born in Kentucky. I moved here when I was 5 years old. Went to Waterloo schools, graduated from Waterloo High School, went to Auburn Community College, became a deputy in 1984, worked for John's father, Tom Cleere.
Sure.
Actually, Kenny Greer hired me, and shortly thereafter he passed away. But most of my career I worked for the Tom, and then was promoted to investigator in '86, right when we had the Bill Allen homicide case with Donna Guerri, and got promoted in '86. Was an investigator until '89, and I transferred to Waterloo Police Department, where I was working as a patrolman, and then a few years later I got promoted to sergeant. Retired in 2009. Gary Sullivan, a friend of mine, asked me to come back to the Sheriff's Department, and I went back and worked with him and Jack for 5 years doing administrative things, which kind of led up to the smooth transition because they really helped me a lot.
That's great.
And then ran and was elected.
And certainly deservedly so. John, I know you're not a guy that I've talked to several people about you, and you're not a guy that likes the media. Don't dislike the media, but you're not a guy that looks for your name in the paper and so forth. I need to ask you, because I've had several people ask me to ask you to comment shortly regarding the trial and the build up to the Carlson trial. Certainly you were a mainstay in the investigation. There wasn't a news show on the networks that you weren't on, that they were portraying what was taking place. How did that settle with you? I know you're not a guy that looks for publicity. Was that strange to see all these national attention on that trial? Did that bother you concerning?
I don't think it didn't bother me. An investigation like the Carlson case, they're very complicated investigations, and there's a lot going on behind the scenes.
Right.
And I think we just the team that we had working on that. We just focused on the investigation. The reporters we dealt with, locally and the national reporters, really were very professional. We had no problems with them. They were good to work with. They knew where the line was, what we could tell them, what we couldn't tell them. There was some give and take, and overall it was a good experience.
It's pretty amazing. It's funny you say that because every time I go to Abigail's restaurant, I think about what took place in part of that chronological order of the investigation. It's weird. Every time I'm there, I think about that. And, of course, we should update the fact that he was taken out to California to answer a charge relative to yet another murder.
Yes.
So, well, John, talk about I know you've been with the police operations for a long time, but talk about your background, where you were born, and how you got involved in law enforcement.
Well, I was born in Waterloo and raised in Waterloo. After a couple of years of college, I kind of ran around the country for a while as a young man, as young men do. And when I came home, I got involved with the sheriff's department as a dispatcher and a corrections officer.
Okay.
I got interested in law enforcement, and for 10 years I worked in uniform. I worked as a deputy sheriff. I worked shifts in the jail as a correction officer, and also what now is the 911 center. Back then we just called it dispatch. After 10 years in uniform, I got promoted into investigations. I was in investigations for a total of 17 years. 10 years out of that 17, my focus was primarily child abuse investigations. I did over 1,000 of them in those 10 years. I learned a lot from that. Worked with a lot of different agencies, and those cases involve a lot of interviewing and investigation, forensics. So I learned a ton. And then 3 years ago, I was lucky enough to get a chance to go to the National FBI Academy and graduated from there. The last 2 years, I was serving as chief deputy, and then, of course, in January, I joined Tim as his undersheriff.
With me is Tim Luce, the sheriff of Seneca County, along with Undersheriff John Cleere. This is the Weber Show, and I hope you're all had a great weekend. I know the weather's not so great today, but it's supposed to be nice tomorrow and Wednesday, so get those golf clubs out of the trunk, maybe. Tim, I want to get you and John to comment on this. As I prepared for this interview, I thought about, as I approach 71 years of age, knock on wood, April 29th, I thought about police and citizens and how they interact. When I was growing up, you respected a police officer, him or her. They worked with you diligently to try to keep you straight and narrow. If you had some, screw-ups, they would, you'd get punished for it, but they would work to get you out of it. Not out of it as far as getting a ticket, but certainly work with you to make you a better person. I never recall growing up where the confrontational, and today, as you see around the country, you got Black Lives Matter. You got all these quote-unquote shootings issues around the country. Policemen being allegedly accused of being trigger-happy. Do you see a different atmosphere and a different feeling between the citizens that maybe Seneca County sees versus around the country, that it's more confrontational, or is it the media that's building up?
I really think we're pretty lucky in our area. Mm-hmm. I mean, I see on the news some of the drastic things that some officers are doing in other states.
Right.
In our area, we're very lucky. We have Seneca Falls PD is very good. Mm-hmm. Waterloo PD, our department, the state police. We're pretty lucky. We have some pretty professional police officers in this area. Right. So I see it a little bit, and mostly it's from people that come in from out of the area. Mm-hmm. I think our public themselves are pretty good, and I want to get back to John and I are. Right. It's not a new concept, but community policing. Bingo. I've talked to our command staff. We've had meetings with the road patrol, and we want our people to get out of the car and talk to the businesses and the people in the area. I think that makes a big difference.
I agree.
So.
John, how about your comment regarding the difference between what you see around the country and some of the issues that have been evolving? And I'm not throwing any shots at police officers. You got to know the situation to deal with it. Do you see a difference in the way police officers are looked upon around the country in some of the cases that you've seen on TV?
Yeah, I think there's definitely our younger officers today face a certain lack of respect compared to, I think, when I first started in law enforcement.
Right.
But as the sheriff said, we're lucky in this area. One of the reasons that I settled in Seneca County, it's almost like an island in the Finger Lakes. The people here are great to work with. It's a nice place to work. And I think one of the reasons that I settled here is and stayed here as a police officer is it's a small enough area where you can actually feel like you're making a difference.
Okay.
And I'm not sure that they have that in the cities.
Yeah, interesting.
And we also, in this area, don't have the gang problem that many of our larger cities have. So I think it's it's apples and oranges there. When you get into the bigger cities, they have different challenges in their law enforcement. Here, I think we generally have a good relationship with the public.
Well, certainly there's two topics that Tim and John we want to talk about. That's DWI situation. I know there have been checkpoints set up by your authority and other police authorities that do this occasionally. And your feeling on DWIs as it relates to Seneca County, Tim, I know every DWI must concern you, but because you're obviously, as you pointed out, you're putting a lot of people at risk for serious injuries when you drive impaired. What's your feeling on DWIs in this county, and do you see it lessening as far as statistics go?
Statistically, our DWIs have been going down. I relay that to a couple different facts. I think sometimes it's education alone. You see a lot more designated drivers. It also is relayed to that we have good enforcement. I think so that's a good thing and a bad thing. But we've had a couple of DWI fatalities in the last, 6 months, something like that. And so it's still a problem, but I think we're dealing with it pretty well.
Your thoughts on 08, we talked about that before the show. 08 is the limit right now?
That's correct.
To register for DWI? Your thoughts, there's been talk in Albany of changing that down lower. Your thoughts, would you be in favor of it being decreased or leave it the way it is?
Being the Stop DWI coordinator, I'd have to agree that it should be lowered.
Okay.
But, I mean, you shouldn't drink and drive. That's really what it comes down to. People have to be a lot more responsible with their drinking and driving. If you have a DD or something like that, just the other night we went to I and some friends went, and I ended up driving because I didn't drink. So
yeah. And John, I'm sure you piggyback what he's saying regarding DWIs. You need to be more responsible, obviously.
Yes. I don't think it's not contested that impaired driving causes deaths and a lot of heartache. So there's no downside to I think to lowering the BAC. But we've seen not only a drop in DWIs over the years, but also a drop in the blood alcohol content. The BACs seem to be going down too. We're not seeing those extravagantly high BACs on the offenders as much as we used to when, say, 15, 20 years ago. So the program is making, I think it's a combination of all things, education, enforcement, and treatment. Those three things together is making a difference. Well, I mentioned to him down at the studios down below here that even as old as I am, I think about it after having a couple of drinks out with friends of mine or my wife. I think about driving home, and I think about, geez, am I close to that 08 number? And it's funny, I'm thinking about it, and, I'm not a guy that goes out and get guzzled, but I think about it. And Tim, you made a comment to me which stuck with me, and that is that you mentioned what you're drinking versus what you're eating, or if you're not eating. You mentioned something about an O2. Explain to our audience, our viewers, the equation of, let's say you sit down and have a couple of beers with no food. You mentioned something about percentages.
Well, it's all based on chemistry and and makeup of your body and things like that. If you're eating, makes a big difference because it goes into your stomach and into your intestines, and if you don't eat, it goes into your stomach and directly into your system. So the basic rule is like a 0.02. If you have a drink, you're going to be a 0.02. If you wait an hour, that's going to come down some because it eats it up. Right. So if you're drinking 3-4 drinks, you're up there. If you drink it in amount of time, it's all time based and your body makeup and stuff like that. So,
well, certainly we are talking to Tim Luce and John Cleere. We're going to get to a topic which is certainly, to me, anyways, a a topic that I see way too much, and I know they do too, and that's the drug issue. A lot of drug issues, a lot of difference of opinions on what to do about it. We're going to talk about that after we take a commercial break. Timmy Luce and John Cleere, Sheriff and Undersheriff here at Seneca County on the Weber Show. We'll come back after we take our commercial break. Cayuga Lake National Bank. Visit Bill Ryan and his team for all of your banking needs. Offices in Union Springs and Aurora, a fine sponsor of this show for over 30 years. DA Liquor on Bird Street in Seneca Falls. Amy Padula and her team will find the right spirit for you every time. When you stop in, tell Amy the dog sent you. Steve Wadhams and Wadhams Enterprises, your local employer of choice. Proud supporter of Weber This Week and local athletics. Fill out an application at wadhams.com. The Gould Hotel welcomes you to come out and enjoy the revitalization of this historic downtown Seneca Falls landmark. Every Wednesday is Ladies' Night with special price drinks and half-priced appetizers. Learn more at thegouldhotel.com. The Omen Theater on William Street in Lyons. See what's playing this week at omentheater.com. Located off New York State Thruway Exit 41, the McGee Diner has earned their reputation as a popular family restaurant, serving country, fresh, home-cooked meals daily. Stop in for breakfast, lunch, or dinner, and check out their menu at mcgeediner.com. The Seneca Falls Country Club, awesome 18-hole layout, open to the public, and a 12-month payment plan for members. Come try to par the par 416, the toughest hole in central New York. Check out SenecaFallsCountryClub.com. And the Newark Pilots of the Perfect Game Collegiate Baseball League, a minor league team with a major league ballpark. Season ticket packages available at NewarkPilots.com. And the Wilson Press in Seneca Falls. My good pal Rich Rickey and his team can handle all of your printing and mailing needs. Visit them online at wpress.com. Rich Rickey and Wilson Press, a fine sponsor of Weber This Week. Well, we're back here on the Weber Show. The dog with you on a Monday. A little rainy, miserable day, but it's supposed to be nice the next couple of days, talking high 50s, low 60s, and then it's supposed to cool again the end of the week. Hey, by the way, I want to remind everybody, speaking of Seneca Falls Country Club, it is time to think about golf, okay? And we have a phenomenal offer. If you haven't been a member of the Seneca Falls Country Club for 3 years, you can enroll and join the club in a super new membership fee, which is $1,200. That includes a cart. So that's phenomenal, plus taxes, I guess $1,296. So check out Jimmy Senecropi or call the Pro Shop down at Seneca Falls and get yourself signed up because it is a steaming deal. Again, you could not be a member for the last 3 years, and then you certainly are eligible for that. Tim and John, before we go, I saw an article in the paper. I wanted to run it by in case somebody missed it. Tim was nice enough or pleasant enough to stand there with a bunch of people that made a big difference in 2015 with a number of DWI arrests. They honored these individuals, and I want to run through their names. State Trooper Stephen Sargent, Sheriff's Deputy Daniel Jacobson, Waterloo Village Police Department Patrolman James, is that Chichak? Chichak. And State Park Police Trooper Jason Steckel, and Seneca Falls Police Department Patrolman Bradley Clouston.
Yep.
So those gentlemen were honored by you, given some notoriety and some effort for helping out in that important element.
Yeah, they were honored for having the most DWIs in the county for the year, and their other enforcement efforts. So yeah, it was a nice showing, and they did a great job.
Well done. During the commercial break, Jimmy pointed something out which we need to touch on, and that, of course, is the work that you do and the great cooperation you get from other county sheriff's offices. Talk about that because that's important in your day-to-day operations.
Well, it's nice because I think John's the same way. When I started in the sheriff's department back in the 80s, and through my career, I got to work with Sheriff Pavro, who was an investigator at the time, and Sheriff Spike, who was an investigator at the time, Barry Wirtz, Sheriff Wirtz, Wayne County. I knew him forever. And Sheriff Gould from Cuyahoga County, he was a trooper when I worked with him. So we get along very well. They call me. I've called them for questions.
Sure.
They've been through things. They've been doing it for years. So they're great guys. We all get along. It's a nice cooperation amongst the 4 or 5 counties, or the 5 counties that surround our area. So it works out really well.
And John, as Tim pointed out, cooperation between the different offices has got to be paramount in what you people do day to day.
Oh yes, things cross county lines.
Sure.
But the agencies all get together once a month in a different. Usually they rotate different counties to talk about the issues and the training. Our officers all train together at the same academy, at the Finger Lakes Law Enforcement Academy. So it works well.
Well, I would be remiss if we didn't talk about drugs. Certainly, Tim and John, it's something that I seem to read too much about every night in the paper, and I know you two are dealing with it with your staffs. Where are we going with this? It seems to me that heroin, it seems to me that we're getting more and more, and we talk about drugs coming in from Rochester to the area. Tim, I know that you're doing the best you can with the resources you have, but talk about what's going on with this, and certainly it's got to be a key issue. It's got to be one of your 100-watt bulbs that you think about daily.
Yeah, we we just met recently, John and I, with the new county manager, the head of Department of Social Services, and the health department, and we had kind of a group meeting trying to figure out what to do, and we think it's a 3-pronged thing. One is education, one is enforcement, and one is to help them after for counseling and things like that. We've kind of started some stuff. Luckily, Jack and Gary actually began it. We have Vivitrol in the jail for those that are opiate dependents that qualify, because there's some people that can't because of medical reasons.
Right.
That they can get a shot of Vivitrol, which will keep them from being high for 30 days after they're released, and we set up appointments for counseling so that they can go to counseling. We also we're in the process of hiring an addictions counselor to be in our jail, which the board has approved. I have a couple other things I'd like to do. One, I'm probably premature, but I'd like to get a school resource officer in the Romulus School District. They're the only school district in our county that doesn't have a school resource officer at this time. They've come up with some money to assist in that, so I had to bring that to the board soon. Also, with all the work that we have done in drugs, I still only have one person in my department that's working drugs.
Amazing.
And you see all the arrests, I really need another deputy so I can put a deputy in there to help him out and work. Because my main process is for enforcement.
Yeah. Certainly, John, as you touched on, with one person, that doesn't seem like that's like an anthill. I mean, it doesn't seem like that's even close to being what you probably need in your staffing. And hopefully the Board of Supervisors would agree based on the data and provide the funds.
Yeah, it's as the sheriff pointed out, it's a 3-pronged problem, and if you don't attack it on the education prevention piece, the enforcement and the treatment,
right,
you're not going to make any headway. The enforcement part it is expensive. It's labor intensive. A lot of work goes into a drug bust. Many times weeks or months.
Wow.
Of work, and there's only one full-time person assigned, and we give that officer help when we can, but it's kind of like make do with what you have type situation.
And it's got to be difficult. Yeah.
Well, it gets really difficult when you're sending a guy out to buy drugs, and you have to try to find somebody for a backup because you can't send them out there on his own.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's too bad. Hopefully, and certainly, if anybody from the supervisors are checking out the show this morning, I know that you're going to do the right thing for the county, but certainly it appears from my vantage point and a lot of people's vantage point that they definitely need resources to continue to combat this epidemic. And certainly, again, I read the paper every night, and I see way too many drug issues, way too many. And it doesn't appear that it's going to get better, so we got to somehow get the resources in place and allow Tim and John to work with their teams to try to, stop it as best they can. It's really a key issue, and I know you both agree with me on that. Tim, you work with a great staff. You got John working with you now, and I don't think we give enough credit to the road patrol and all the people that work in the Seneca County. I think, not that they're not overlooked by you two, because you obviously are running the show in the administration side of it, but I think that we need to pay more attention and give credit where credit is due. For the most part, I know a lot of your deputies. I'm close friends with one of them, but certainly I would like you to speak about your team, and I think your team deserves kudos for what they do day in and day out.
Yeah, our deputies, they do a great job.
Yeah.
They really do. They're very professional. We try to get them as much training as we can, and not only the deputies, the correction officers. They do
Sure.
a job that there's a lot of people would never want to do.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
They do a great job, really do.
And John, you certainly agree with that too. You've worked with a lot of them for many, many years, and they put on the uniform and do the best they can every day.
They're a great group. They believe in what they're doing. They're not in it just for the paycheck. They really do care about the community, and I'm proud to be part of the team.
Well, I had a chance to, when you were sworn in, I came out and saw your deal along with yours and John, and that had been the first time I'd been to the facility, believe it or not. Mm-hmm. Thank God I hadn't been to the jail, But I got to admit, I was very impressed by that facility. It's really a beautiful facility.
We have a beautiful facility. I mean, we moved. I think they moved in 2007.
Yeah.
Right now, we're into the stage where certain things are starting to break down, but we have a great staff in our maintenance too.
Yeah.
Mike Modges, he knows that building inside and out. Things that he knows that are going to go, and he works diligently day in and day out. He does a great job.
Very interesting. Well, guys, I do want to appreciate the fact that you took time out of your busy schedule to come in and talk to me about. I know the show is almost over with, and I just want to thank you both for spending some time with us this morning, and we'd love to have you come back down the road and give us an update.
Okay.
John Cleere, the Undersheriff, Tim Luce, the Sheriff of Seneca County, and again, folks, these guys are here to talk about what's going on, but really underappreciated in my view. All the police authorities don't get enough respect, and certainly, again, I urge the supervisors, if they're checking out the show this morning, to give them the resources to do their job in an effective way. And I know they're doing the best they can, so we spend a lot of money on a lot of issues, but the drug issue is one of the things that I think needs really some close attention to. Hey, by the way, before I sign off this morning, I would be remiss if I didn't mention a couple of things. Let's give kudos again to the South Seneca girls. They were champions of New York State Class C. Jimmy and Dave Barnick did the game on Saturday, did a great job. And Jimmy, it had to be quite a thrill to see them power their way to the triumph on Saturday, and did equally as well in the finals on Sunday.
Yeah, they're a great team, a great group of girls. They work hard. They have a great coach. The whole community was behind them. I think the population of Ovid was down to like about 10 on this weekend because they were all in Troy.
That's great.
And there was a great turnout and a lot of goodwill. And one thing I'll say this, being with Dave Barnick, as he walks through the concourses at Hudson Valley, every 5 seconds somebody stop him and talk to him.
He's Mr.
like,
South Seneca.
If he ever ran for mayor of Ovid or Interlaken, he'd win.
Well, I've done a lot of dumb things in my life, but the smartest thing I ever did is hiring Dave Barnick. And when I started with WSFW, maybe John remembers in 1970, after a few years of broadcasting sports, I decided we needed help, and we brought in people for auditions, and Dave Barnick, actually I got him because he was big and he could save my butt in a bar if somebody was screaming at me for something stupid on air, which I do a lot. But Dave Barnick was hired by yours truly, so I'm the one responsible for him being in the media, and he has done a good job, and he is like Mr. Ovid, as you know, Dave Barnick. So Dave did a great job, and kudos to the South Seneca girls. Couldn't be happier for you. And again, they won it in 2003. They win it now. And let's not forget our girls from Romulus, who just won it a couple of years ago. So I posted on Facebook this morning. You drive out to the south of the county, you see all this farmland, open spaces. Then you see a sign that says Romulus. And then down the road a little bit, you see a sign that says Welcome to Ovid. These gals can play. They got great athletes. Kudos to them from all of us here from FingerLakes1.com. And before I sign off, I got to kid my buddy Jimmy. His SU Orangemen did get in, even though the prognosticators leading up to the selection show last night on CBS for the NCAA March Madness, every one of them said they were out. I found that interesting because I reviewed that Sunday afternoon, and everyone, including Joe Lenardi, had them on the outs. Well, they got in. They got a 10 seed. They're playing in St. Louis, the Midwest Division, where Virginia is the number 1 seed. Syracuse now will play Dayton at 12:15 this coming Friday. My wife's not happy. We lose The Young and Restless and The Bold and Beautiful soap operas. She's not a happy camper. Thursday and Friday, they are taken off the air for NCAA basketball. But what I'm going with is, I got laughing, is when they were announcing and flipping over the panels of where your team was being seated, and hopefully you got in the tournament, CBS's Doug Gottlieb will not be invited to Syracuse, I can tell you, to speak at a dinner. He ripped the Orangemen for getting in. I don't know if Jimmy saw it, but he went ballistic, saying there's no shot in the world they should have ever made it. And the reason, he said, they lost 5 out of the last 6, even though they played competitive basketball games down the stretch. But he was signaling his concern was losing to the Johnnies of St. John's when Hopkins was coaching, and that was a loss that he thought should have been the fatal blow of Syracuse not getting it.
Luckily, he doesn't make the decisions, and Syracuse got in. They won at Duke. They won a preseason tournament, Battle for Atlantis, in a field that has 5 teams that are in this tournament.
I know. I agree.
They beat St. Bonaventure, who they're the ones that got snubbed. They had a 29 RPI. They got snubbed. They should have been in the tournament. They were A10 league champions.
Yeah, I agree.
Atlantic 10 league champions got snubbed. Yeah. And Syracuse beat them, which was one of our quality wins. So I don't really care what Doug Gottlieb says. We're in it, and you make some shots, and maybe you go to the Final Four. Who knows?
I agree.
We'll see.
I agree. So, and by the way, speaking of people upset, John Calipari of Tim Luce's home state, Kentucky, he's not happy about a 4 seed either. He wants something better than that. He's complaining this morning. He was saying that the NCAA should have sent him to Anchorage, Alaska, because he was having a fit about it. That was on ESPN before I came to do this show. Hey, next week, by the way, folks, we talk about the 19K run, which is signifying the women's issues, et cetera, coming up May 7th this year. Katie McIntyre, my good friend, when Irish eyes are smiling, she'll be in a good mood, I'm sure, on Thursday. And by the way, speaking of Thursday, since we have 2 fine people here today representing police authority, don't get stupid on St. Patrick's Day, okay? I'm telling you right now in front of Tim Luce and John Cleere, you've been warned, don't get stupid. You want a glass of green beer? Have a glass. You want 2 glasses? Have 2, and then shut it down. And as Tim said this morning on the show, get a DD. Hire a cab, do something, right, Tim?
That's correct.
All right. Thanks, Tim, and thanks, John.
Thank you.
For joining us on Weber This Week.
Us.
We'll catch you next week, folks, for another show, and thanks for joining us. That's Weber This Week with Tim Luce and John Cleere, my special guests.
One time